The Unrelating podcasts are meant to be for education and entertainment. They don't constitute a service or advice. For personal struggles, please reach out to a medical or mental health professional.
Hey, Michelle.
Oh, hey, Cal.
How are you doing?
I'm good. I am happy to be with you again today.
Yeah. So in this special Ask Us Anything episode, we've received listener emails and are excited to answer your questions.
And it's a good time to remind people that if you have a question, you can email us at theunrelatingpodcast@gmail.com and get your question onto our show.
Welcome to Unrelating with Kel and Michelle, and I'm one of your hosts, Kelly. With me is my co-host, Michelle, a licensed marriage and family therapist who's been providing individual and couples therapy for over a decade. Together, we'll explore how we engage in relationships, why we do what we do, and what causes people to unrelate. Our first question: Dear Kel and Michelle, my spouse is addicted to their phone. They're on it when we watch TV, when we're in bed before sleep, at restaurants, pretty much everywhere. I've brought the topic up and told them that it bothers me, but I'm concerned that I sound like a nag. Please help. This is from an anonymous.
Yeah. It could be from, a million people who all have that same feeling. That's definitely something I have come across in my practice. I have friends who have the same complaint. So, I use the term universal themes a lot on our show, but that's kind of the point of the show, is that this happens quite a bit. And I'm hoping that you and I can talk it through and give some people just either a little comfort or relatability on the topic.
I mean, look around. Who's not on their phones nowadays? I'm guilty of it. I think we're not of the age where we're addicted to like social media, like other folks. But I am, I'm looking on the news quite a bit, which I guess you could call it doom scrolling in some ways.
Yep.
I do that. I do it on the couch watching TV. I'm guilty. So now's a good time for me to work out my issue too, I guess.
Yeah, I would say too, the other thing is it's not just a time suck, but it's a time bender. So when we're on our phone, we don't realize how much time is going by. So even if I'm like, oh, I'm just going to pop on and look up a recipe or something, which is something I do often, then it's like half hour has gone by. I'm still on there, even though that wasn't my intent. So we just get lost in there.
Yeah. So Michelle, they said here that they've brought the topic up with their spouse and told them that it bothers them. So I'd be curious. They're obviously bothered by it. So there's something going on there where they're not getting a need met, or they're feeling. I'm assuming they didn't really specify, but I'm assuming that they're feeling a bit ignored or something.
Kel, I love that you said that, because you're like, I'm rubbing off on you, I think. You got the clinical slant today. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's where my brain went immediately too, is like, what's the feeling behind the feeling? That's always what I'm looking for. Mm-hmm. And the subtext of that question sounds like, because they're on their phone all the time, that is time taken away from me feeling cared about or paid attention to, or, it's really hard to feel connection or intimacy when someone's looking down at their phone. So yeah, my guess would be that all of that is factoring in. But I've heard this with friends too. Like, we go out with your friends and they're on their phone at the table, and it feels like a rejection in some way.
I've had this conversation with my spouse, and I make it a point. We make it a point of not scrolling when we're going out to dinner or out somewhere. I just don't, just be present, I guess is what we're trying to do. Mm-hmm. So I'm conscious of her feelings, and I'm trying to be a bit better about that. So, occasionally there's going to be situations where you're going to check emails or something like that. Again, I don't know the context of this person's question, but there's a million reasons why you're on your phone. You shouldn't be playing Wordle or scrolling YouTube for videos when you're hanging out with your spouse, necessarily out somewhere. I try to be present. That doesn't address their question on how we can help them. What we do, what my spouse and I do, is we talked about it. Look, this is an issue. We're aware this is an issue. Let's be better about it. Let's talk. Let's be present. Let's work on this, because we're not the only ones. It's everybody. Once you're aware of it, I think you can probably do a better job of trying to cut back on it.
I agree with you. And I also, there's a part of me too that thinks that for some people, it goes beyond the ability to control it. We have a certain tech addiction that's has taken over. And so I'd be curious if they were a couple in front of me, one piece of homework I might give them is to ask the spouse to go an entire hour, like an entire
Mm-hmm.
dinner with their phone shut off
Mm-hmm.
and see just how dysregulated that person gets.
Mm-hmm.
Because I would want to get a sense of just how difficult the ask is going to be for that person. It might be like you and your spouse, Kelly. It hasn't come to the point where it's so hard not to that you guys can't make the commitment.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a different conversation if that spouse like truly is having withdrawal symptoms. And I'm not trying to be glib about that. But if they're so preoccupied with the fact that their phone is off, they can't be present then either. So that's going to take time and building of some skills. And
Mm-hmm.
so I guess it's hard with viewer questions because my mind is always like, I need more information.
Mm-hmm.
But I think
Yeah.
one thing would be to really try and assess the severity of the addiction, if I can call it that.
Yeah.
And also
Yeah.
to find out from the person who wrote this, how they were communicating that. Because how you're coming at someone, it really does make a difference in how they're going to receive that ask.
Yeah. I'd be curious too if they have kids. They didn't say so, but if they did, they're setting it. If they're doing this in front of their kids, or this person's doing this in front of their kids, that's setting a bad example for them, and you're going to only create more of an issue. I think if the kids are doing it too. So I would hope not, but I know parents can sometimes be just as bad, if not worse, than their kids on their phones.
Yeah, and it's so much of it is subconscious. Sometimes you don't even realize that you've grabbed your phone and you're looking at it. And, there have been times when I'm on my phone and my kids are asking me a question and I didn't even hear it. They have to repeat themselves. And then I'm like, oh, man. But I don't know. I feel like this particular scenario is quite common.
But Michelle, they said they're concerned about being a nag.
Mhm.
Is this person being a nag if they call their spouse out?
No, but again, how they're calling their spouse out, how often they're doing it. Clearly, whatever they're saying isn't effective because the spouse isn't changing their behavior in any way. And I don't want to put it on the spouse that feels like they're nagging to be like, it's your job to perfectly say it so that the other person receives it. That's not what I'm trying to say. But I think in order to not feel like a nag, you may need to take a little bit of time to be more deliberate about not only how you're making your ask for less phone time, but also what your expectation is. Are you going to be able to tolerate small wins? So are you saying put it away for the entire day? Or are you saying, can we try 10 minutes where neither of us looks at our phone? Can this person be a little bit more specific about how it's impacting the relationship? These are all things that person can consider if they're feeling like a nag.
Great advice. Great counsel. Hopefully this helped, Anonymous, and please feel free to follow up with us and give us an update on the advice and how it went and if this worked. Thank you. All right, next question. Hi, Unrelating. I love the podcast. Thank you. We appreciate
nice.
that. Normally, I think of myself as a good person, but lately, with the current political landscape, it's been hard for me to accept family and friends who don't share my values and are okay with things that I find appalling. It's really messed with my idea of what it means to be a good person. Any advice on how to navigate this new reality? Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That's, again, they didn't say who they were, the anonymous. Great question. Thank you for sending.
And you don't even have to know kind of whatever their slant is because people from all walks of life are feeling that way. So,
Yeah. Okay. Let's break this down. Certainly, I think we can all relate to this question in some fashion. Throughout our lives, we've had friends or family who may or may not share our values.
yeah.
So how have we dealt with it before and how do we deal with it now? I mean, this person's finding things that are appalling and it's really messed with their idea of what it means to be a good person. Michelle, have you had this topic come up in your practice?
Oh yeah, like 1,000 times. This is huge, especially in the last couple of years, um, because things are so polarized. People are struggling with feeling like they had a certain idea of a person, and then that person kind of vocalizes something that feels shocking or different, and then they're like, I don't even know anymore. Like I love this person, or I always thought of them as a good person, but now I'm feeling something contrary to that. And I've also had people question whether they feel like they're a good person anymore, or if they ever were like this. I don't know if it's imposter syndrome necessarily, but feeling like, am I who I think I am? Um, that sneaking or nagging feeling that maybe you're not as great as people say you are or that you think you are.
This is a tough question, and I'm not going to lie. I'm struggling with an answer for this as well, and how I can only relate to it from a sense that, I have felt the same way. I'm sure at times where I may or may not agree with somebody, but ultimately, at the end of the day, you know, we all have to get along. Okay, it's finding the good, looking for the good in people, and
I know it feels like a little too trite maybe to say it that way, but when's the last time, it's a good exercise for yourself to think like, here's someone that I'm really struggling to have respect for because of whatever, it's usually like something value related. Um, when's the last time I stopped to think, yeah, but let me list all the ways that I do respect them or have see value in who they are. And those are usually more higher in number, I would say. If it's someone like a friend or a family member you've known a long time, trust that's someone you have seen value in already. I don't know, it's tough because, people have changed. I had
mm-hmm,
a client whose parent believed something their whole life and then just suddenly in the last couple of years changed their values almost 180. And
mm-hmm,
there's no good solution for how to handle that. You don't want to cut someone off because you don't agree with them. You don't want to feel like you're condoning something or not speaking up if you feel strongly in opposition to that. But
I do think it's important to find common ground with people. I mean, you may not agree with everything, and this happens in the political landscape. You may not agree with everyone's views, but you have to reach compromise.
that was the spirit of it at one point, right? Like compromise
Mm-hmm.
somehow became a bad word at one point, but how like governing, in my opinion, my humble opinion as not someone in government, is about like finding common ground and compromising and not getting everything you want.
Mm-hmm.
And then we ended up with a bunch of people saying all or nothing, all or nothing. And if we take that same tack with our relationships, how do they survive? Because there isn't any relationship out there that can be all or nothing.
Yeah. And I will say to the person who sent this question, look, you are a good person. You're thinking about this. You've raised this question with us. So it is something you're concerned about. So from that standpoint, I think you are self-aware,
That's a great
right?
point, Kelly.
And they're asking this question and they're like, okay, how can they navigate this? They're struggling with it, but they're trying. They really are. They're trying here, and it seems like it's important. It's really important to them. So, kudos to them for bringing this question up. I mean, again, I think a lot of people can probably can relate to this, but it's a really difficult topic.
It is. And for some reason, it makes me think about just generally when you are feeling disappointed in someone, some relationship you have. Because I think that's also underlying this is just like a sense of disappointment or sadness or even some grief, if, about the relationship being impacted by this. And just, finding some skills, some ways to manage those feelings, and also understanding that it's okay to sometimes feel disappointed in your partner or like you are I don't know. I mean, when I'm supervising young clinicians, I tell them it's okay to judge your clients, sometimes because you're a
Mm-hmm.
human being, but that's not the space that you're creating. So in the room, that's not something you're focusing on. But as humans, we all have to just accept that we're going to have these feelings about other humans.
Yeah, totally. This person also mentioned, the current political landscape. My advice to them: turn it off, dial it back. Don't doom scroll. Don't read too much, especially if it bothers you. I think ultimately we did too much of that in the past. And one thing I'm working on moving forward is I'm just not going to do it. I'm not going to get invested. I'm not going to freak out. Okay. I mean, about decisions that our politicians may or may not make. I'm just not going to do it. I mean, certainly you don't want to be oblivious, but at the same time, and you want to stand up for what you believe in. And if you want to go out there and you want to, voting matters. Obviously, we have to vote. But and if you want to go out there and you want to march, or stand up for what you believe in, of course that's important. But I just don't think we should be. The sky is not falling. Okay, let's just try to keep things in perspective here. Think big picture, and just again try not to get too wrapped up in the day-to-day nonsense.
Yeah, I find it difficult when you feel in your bones that the sky is falling to be told that it isn't. I'm not knocking you, Kel.
Yes, sure.
Just in the sense of like it's not our job to determine whether it is or not. I think however you feel about it, engaged citizenry is a good thing. I was joking with a client once, like, if your partner cheats, you can still stay with them. If your partner, is a bum, you can still stay with them. If your partner doesn't vote, break up. Regardless, again, of who they're voting for, the act of voting is very important.
So don't tell people how to feel. Tell them what?
Tell them that whatever they're feeling, that they can put some kind of intention or action behind it if they want to feel less helpless about that feeling. I think too, the idea of, am I a good person? Or, I'm feeling like I don't know what a good person is anymore. I think that's what the question was. I think identity work is important to do long-term as a person, that self-reflection. And it's not a bad time for this person to just kind of reestablish what their definition of a good person is, what those values are, what those traits are, what characteristics make up a good person, and then kind of think about how they measure up to that. If I had to say, like, there's 5 things I consider for someone to be a good person, and I list those things, and I can say, like, where am I on the spectrum of those things, and where could I do better, and where am I killing it, or whatever. And that's some self-work that this person can do. And that can also help distract from the macro stuff.
Great feedback, Michelle. Hopefully this answers the anonymous's question and helps them a little bit.
Yeah, and I should say, we're not spending an hour on each question, right? So this is kind of a surface level conversation. There's so much more we could say about these things. So if anyone's listening and they're like, you know what, I need more, then just email us, of course.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or better yet, come on the podcast.
Yeah, come on the show. Yeah.
We'd love to talk to you. So great. Thanks, Michelle. Last question. Hi, Kel and Michelle. I didn't want to come on the podcast because this is such a difficult subject, but I want to get your help. We've been married 12 years and have 2 young children. Recently, I've discovered there's been some cheating, but I don't know how extensive it is. I confronted them about it and it didn't go well. Do you think relationships can recover from cheating? Again, this is from Anonymous. There's no person attached. Wow, what a question. Okay, Michelle.
This is great. This is going to be a 2-second segment because the answer is yes. Done. Great show, Cal. No, I'm kidding. No, but like, to boil it down, yes, I absolutely believe that a couple can recover from infidelity, from any kind of betrayal and trust. It's doable. There's just a lot of factors that go into it.
Yeah, we didn't get a lot of information in this question, but it seems like they confronted them about it and it didn't go well. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall for that conversation too.
Yeah, although I would say, when does it? I've never heard an initial conversation when confronted with your cheating that does go well. So
yeah, you said this is an easy answer. Yes, they can recover, but how do they recover? I mean, what? I mean, I can only imagine if I was in this person's shoes and my spouse cheated, and what would be okay, why? First, my first question would be like, why? Or what happened? What questions should they be asking?
Yeah. Well, I absolutely believe that putting in the investment into couples therapy when there has been a betrayal is one of the best ways to spend your time and money, because that a good couples therapist is going to force you guys um, to ask the hard questions and hear hard answers. And usually, when there's been infidelity, there's some hard topics to discuss, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
usually not
Mm-hmm.
very cut and dry. So that is my first thing, is try and get some professional help. If that's not, if you don't have access to that, or even if you do, what's going to be important is really getting each other on an honest page. So I know when I'm dealing with that with a couple, I like to meet individually with them, although I do that anyway in couples therapy, but just to get a sense from them, like, what are you not saying in front of the person? What's behind, the things you are saying, because there's more to the story. Because a lot of couples aren't ready to say it in front of their partner.
Mm-hmm.
If they can get to a point where both people are being honest and hearing each other, then the biggest piece to recovering from infidelity, in my opinion, is the trust building phase. And that's
Yeah.
where you kind of make it or break it,
Yep.
because you can't skip it. That's for sure. um, you're gonna have to both partners are gonna have to tolerate that trust building. And when I say tolerate, because a lot of anxiety comes up for the person that was betrayed. There's always that worry and fear and uncertainty, and it's like, can I really trust? What if it happens again? Or will I ever feel secure in this relationship again? And all of those fears come up. So tolerating that phase where the other person's really trying to rebuild trust. And I would say for the person who did the betraying, tolerating the window where you have to step up in a more assertive and intentional way. And a lot of times they get impatient and they're like, well, it's been a couple days, or it's been a couple weeks, or it's been a couple months. And, they're still treating me like I'm suspicious, or they're not trusting me. And that's the big one for a lot of people who are trying to rebuild the trust, is like, they give up too soon, or they feel entitled to some fast fix.
Yeah.
And then there's the ambivalence to it, I would say, of, some you can hold more than one feeling at a time. So maybe the person who did the betraying feels justified. You hear that a lot, like, oh, well, I was feeling, unappreciated, or I was feeling, disconnected, or whatever reason that led to the betrayal. Um, but I'm also sorry. So a lot of times the person that was betrayed doesn't know how to handle those two things at the same time. It's like,
Yeah.
you can be sorry and feel justified at the same time. And that's a tricky balance. But I always encourage my couples to, like, just trust that it's okay to have those two things happening at the same time. We're going to talk through that justification piece. But the last thing I'll say, and Kelly, you jump in, is the idea that, like, if you cannot offer a sincere apology when you've broken someone's trust, then I don't see that person being able to recover.
Trust, I mean, to me is maybe, if not the most important it's one of the most important, obviously, aspects of a marriage. I mean, you have to have that. And it goes, that trust in everything. It's the glue that holds everything together. Without that, it seems like, what do you have? So rebuilding that trust is definitely key for this relationship. What wasn't mentioned in this question, and I'd be curious. They mentioned they have two young children. Do the kids know? The kid, I don't know how young they are, but are they even aware? And what was their thought process behind having two kids? Because sometimes having kids keeps people together when maybe they shouldn't be together. I'm sure you see this in your practice too, where it's like, well, we're going to stay together for the kids. So
Yeah.
um, that might be another factor in this person's question too, that we're not really, it's not really apparent here.
Yeah. I don't care if you're, Oscar worthy performances here. You cannot act your way out of kids picking up on a bad relationship. So if you think, oh, if we'll stay together and the kids will never know that, we're having problems, that's just not how it works. Kids are astute. Kids listen, they watch, they pick up on things. And there can be damage done psychologically to children who are just in an atmosphere where the parents really are not either being respectful to each other or pretending that everything's okay. I mean, think of what that teaches a kid in their own relationships. Just pretend it's okay.
Well, hopefully it works out for the two of them, this couple.
Yeah, here's the problem with viewer questions. I'm like dying to get these people into my office. Like I'm itching to support them, and it's like you cannot cover infidelity in 5 minutes. But
no, I would love it if this person reached out, and actually I'll respond and see if they want to come on the show. We can talk to them about it if they're up for it. This is a really touchy subject, difficult, and they may not want to. Well, clearly they don't want to talk about it in public, but we could keep them anonymous. Hopefully this works out for them. We're rooting for you.
Yeah, and to go back to the original answer, there is hope if both parties are committed to doing the work to rebuild the trust and to kind of get back on track with their relationship. So there's potential resiliency there.
There you go. Those are our 3 questions. Hopefully those were helpful for our listeners who reached out to us, and we would encourage others to do the same. So if you have any questions for Kel and Michelle, please do so. Reach out, email us. Please come on the show. We'd love to have you.
This was fun. I everything we talked about are things I hear on a daily basis from clients, and so it feels very relevant.
Keep them coming, folks. We love it. So thanks again. And please be sure to follow us on social media, the Unrelating Podcast on Instagram and Facebook. Keep those questions coming.
Yeah, and if I can say, Kel, very insightful stuff from you. And I like it sometimes when we don't necessarily agree, because that's just a different perspective. I'm by no means the be-all, end-all answer. So speak up when you have a differing view. I love it.
Michelle, you're secretly my personal therapist. I didn't tell you that, but I'm selfishly doing this podcast just because I want the free advice. I mean, I want the free therapy. I want the free therapy from you.
Well, the show definitely isn't therapy, because it's a very different experience when you're in the room with your therapist, and it's a very different space. But yeah, the fact that you and I get to talk about these topics is therapeutic, if that's the way to put it.
If you're struggling with family, friends, or coworkers, in a bad relationship and wondering what to do, or you want a relationship and to set yourself up for success, then we want to talk to you. So make your appointment on Unrelating. To be a guest, ask a question, or recommend a topic, drop us an email at theunrelatingpodcast@gmail.com. And be sure to follow us on Instagram or Facebook.